Well, today's amazing video, it's a trip down memory lane for Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC. And as you'll see, you'll be amazed, I think, by the impression that a young RFK Jr. made on his classmate, a young Lawrence O'Donnell. You know, Jagger and I were just talking. Lawrence O'Donnell and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. are both products of an Irish Catholic East Coast, Boston baked beans, cup of chowder. Well, there's always next year for the Bo Sox mentality. But more than that, you know, it's a way of thinking, a way of looking at the world, and a way of calling BS quite unlike anyone else on the planet. And by BS, we don't mean a Bachelor of Science degree. Actually, at Harvard University, part of the motivation for acceptance into that prestigious school is so that you can get wicked smart and call BS with the best, so long as you stay awake. And so, in our clip today, Lawrence O'Donnell, MSNBC, he goes old school on RFK Jr., his Harvard classmate, and what he reveals may make his crimson cohort a little red-faced. Because while everyone in Boston proudly carries a chip on their shoulder...
Oh, what's that look? Oh, you gonna take a swing at me? Is today the day? Huh? Today the day you take a swing at your old man? Is that what it is? Come on, you a man now? I didn't think so!
It was what was in young Bobby's arm during those years that is the subject of today's sobering video. Now, before we run that, let's get some first-hand background on Trump's pick to serve as Secretary of Health and Human Services in his own words.
I went to a party for an elder brother of a friend of mine who had just been drafted to go to Vietnam. I was hitchhiking home from that party, and an older boy picked me up who I knew, and he offered me some LSD. And I had never taken any kind of drug before. I wouldn't have taken it, but I had a real deep interest, intense interest in paleontology. And I said to this guy, I said, if I take this, will I see dinosaurs? And he said, you might. I was walking home, and just before I got to my house, I saw some older boys in the woods. I went in there to see what they were doing, and I told them I was crashing on the acid. And they said, try some of this. And it was crystal meth. And I took a snort of it, and I felt great. And that incident was the template for my addiction over the next 14 years. Within a month, I was shooting heroin, and that was my kind of drug of choice.
So, as RFK Jr. squires around Washington in his cabinet vetting dance of conspiratorial contrition, well, it's the Sweet Jane years that Lawrence O'Donnell focuses on in today's revealing clip, which is a remembrance of a kind of classroom cramming from one Harvard grad to another. And as you're about to see, well, back in the mid-'70s, apparently ignoramus was a cool college nickname. Maybe? I don't know. Well, let's let Lawrence open his Harvard University scrapbook for us and share some stunning recollections.
Now, when asked about the polio vaccine in Senate hallways, Robert Kennedy Jr. says this.
Mr. Kennedy, what's your position on the polio vaccine?
Do you mind repeating what you said previously about the polio vaccine?
Do you support it?
Yeah, I support it.
Here is what Robert Kennedy said about the polio vaccine last year.
There's no vaccine that is, safe and effective.
Those are big words. What about the polio? Can we talk about the polio?
Well, here's the problem.
Yes.
Here's the problem. 98 million people who got that vaccine in my generation got it, and now you've had this explosion of soft tissue cancers in our generation that kill many, 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 many more people than polio ever did. So if you say to me that the polio vaccine was effective against polio, I'm going to say yes. And if you say to me, did it kill more people? Did it cause more deaths than avert? I would say, I don't know, because we don't have the data on that.
That uneducated buffoon did not take a single pre-med science course in college. He could never get through organic chemistry or inorganic chemistry. And in the class I was in with him in college, he could not keep his eyes open. I did not know then that he was a heroin addict every day he was in college. He has said he was a heroin addict for 14 years. And while he was a heroin addict, His powerful uncle, Senator Ted Kennedy, managed to get him a job in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. And while he was working for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, he was committing drug crimes every day, for which he was finally arrested, charged, and convicted. And that is who Donald Trump wants to be Secretary of Health and Human Services. A science ignoramus who was in a heroin stupor every day that he could have been studying science in college. It is no surprise that the heroin addict, convicted criminal, turned self-described medical expert does not have the votes yet to be confirmed by the United States Senate.
The abject disappointment that RFK Jr. represents to so many, his family certainly, but especially, Lawrence O'Donnell, people like me. Hey, if you grew up at that time, imbued by the Kennedy mystique, only to see a family flawed at every level, well, young Bobby stands to distinguish himself past his Nazi-appeasing grandfather and his bridge-jumping uncle as the blackest sheep from that compound down in Hyannis, if his ill-informed and uneducated priorities become the policy of our nation's health care. And if that's the case, then maybe losing an afternoon in a Cambridge apartment in a heroin haze in 1976 doesn't seem that bad at all, so long as you're listening to WBCN.